This is the first episode of Digitalent's podcast, episode number 1. So I want to spend a little moment just talking about how we got here and why we're doing this. So at Digitalent, we recruit for technology and creative roles, mainly across the UK and Australia, and pretty much all day, every day, we spend talking to our clients and candidates and talking to each other internally about hiring and recruitment within those tech and creative worlds. And because we're a fully distributed team, we always have been since we started the business in 2017, and even pre-COVID, we all worked from home. And Dillan has just moved to New Zealand, and that means that between the 5 of us in the business, we're now spread across 4 different time zones. So at the moment, it's actually 5:30 a.m. in the UK, which is why it looks like a dungeon where I am.
And the sun is actually out where I am. It's 5:30 p.m.
Normally it's the other way around, doesn't it? Whenever we talk, it's pitch black where you are, and it's
dark.
It's the sun's just come up where we are in the UK. So the reason why we're doing this sort of segment of podcast is that we spend our life talking to each other about recruitment and hiring on video calls, because we're a completely remote distributed team who work from home for the majority of the time. And we have these regular catch-ups with each other. Myself and Dillan catch up all the time, and Amy and Alex and Tom, we catch up all independently with each other, and we have these, I suppose, what you would call a debrief session with each other very regularly, when we talk about stuff that's going on in the business, current challenges that clients are working on, some of the projects that we're involved in, and I suppose the steps that we go through in order to bring about a successful outcome to the clients and the candidates that we see as customers, really. So what we do on these calls quite naturally is we're always analysing issues and looking for solutions. And I was saying to Dillan the other day, hey, wouldn't it be good to record these sessions and sort of give people a little peek behind the curtain as to the actual stuff that we do, but behind the scenes in the recruitment agency world. Because I think there's a lot of misconceptions out there about what we do, and the I suppose the role that we play. Some people think that we just fire CVs and ask for a fee at the end. So hopefully this podcast can dispel some of those misconceptions and give people a little bit of an insight into the sort of real world challenges that we face for business.
I think it's a lot more of, I've got a problem, how the hell do I solve this, Chris?
Yeah,
sort me out.
We need that yesterday.
And vice versa.
Yeah. And it's a good point though, because ultimately, the thing that's kept me interested and passionate and motivated about recruitment in general is the fact that we solve, real world business problems, and you get to really get under the skin of those issues with businesses and clients, and really understand, look, what are you struggling with? Why is this role an issue? Or why are these roles, this recruitment drive in particular, an issue? Why has it come about? And the more you start finding out about clients, the more you realise that the majority of the time they're extremely difficult roles to hire, which is why they come to a sort of specialist recruitment agency like us. But there's a degree of pressure in getting it right, both for us as a business and for them as a business, because if they don't, then it has a knock-on effect most of the time in, you know, the objectives that they're trying to hit.
Part of our role is obviously working with our clients and helping them actually establish what their issues are and what their problems are, because they might come to us with, I can't do this, or I can't fill this role, blah, 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 but they don't actually know what's holding them back.
Exactly.
I think for us, we've been through this so many times, and between us all, we kind of know the pitfalls and what needs to be done to get things delivered. I think it's working with them to try and identify exactly what those problems are and helping solve.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So let's debrief then. Let's go through a you know, a story and a scenario, start to finish, for one of our current clients. So yeah, what have we got? What should we go through with the first one, do you think?
I think we should look at maybe one of our first clients. We actually used Odro and video technology in Australia.
Yeah.
An old client of yours that you've worked with before and already placed.
That's right.
Kind of knew the business quite well. They're a returning client from probably, was it 2 years previous, I think?
I think it was a bit longer than that, actually. I mean, if you're talking, the first time I dealt with this company was, I think, in 2013 in Sydney. They're a sort of financial, they're in financial services, essentially. They're sort of a trading firm is probably how you would probably best describe them. Dealt with them first in 2013. And then again, I think it was in 2016, round about then. I don't know, my memory's hazy with regards to the dates. And yeah, I'd managed to place.
This was the third time.
Yeah, this was the third. This was the third time that they've sort of come back. So we've got, you know, good relationship with, you know, the directors in the business and the guys who run it. But that's an interesting company because they're a small organisation, but they're spread globally as a team. So they're quite small, like sub 10 in terms of like size of team, but that includes, you know, the traders and what have you. And I think you know, the reason why that hire is such a critical hire for that type of company is because it was the sole, you know, technology person, software development, sort of like head of technology type person within the company. So there was a sort of key man risk for that role, in that, you know, if anything goes wrong, that person needs to be there on hand to sort of, you know, facilitate the tech and obviously build new systems and you know, make sure that everything's running. And there's, with that trading firm, if you remember, there was a sort of low latency aspect to it, so very little downtime, and, you know, it was, you know, very high dependency systems and exchange connectivity and things like that. If you remember all those.
Great. I mean, they needed someone smart enough, senior enough, able to work on their own, with a smaller, wider, dispersed team, and to really get the right personality that kind of fit in with the
from
business,
home as well,
and also get
from home.
Yeah. This is way before COVID.
Yeah. Well, the first time that they came to us, if you remember, in 2013, I don't think any other client that I was working with or you were working with at that time had that setup where they were working from totally from home. They had no fixed like central office as such. And if you remember at the time, it was quite unusual. It was quite unusual for us, wasn't it?
Like, it's funny looking back now.
Yeah,
it's so weird looking back now. That is so strange. Whereas now it's just
the norm for most companies. Kind of like, I was going to say post-COVID, but we're still in the thick of it. But yeah. I mean, yeah. So they were. Yeah, we knew. The good thing about that is that because we had a good long-standing relationship with them. We haven't recruited for them frequently during that time. It was a sort of like, maybe every 3 years or so type thing. Hire the same type,
which is not at all
type of role for them and stuff. So we knew the relationship was there. We understanding of the business was certainly there. And we knew what type of personality that would really work within that organisation and with that setup of working from home and obviously interacting with the individuals within the business. So when they came to us, when was it exactly that they came to us? Can you remember? It was 2018? Yeah.
18?
2000.
It was my first year in Digitalent, so it was
Australia,
one of my first senior roles that I'd worked.
Yeah, that's right.
And obviously the first time we'd kind of pitched Odro as a software, and I think you'd only been using that kind of platform for maybe a couple of months before previous in the UK. And it was an opportunity for us, obviously, with it being such a not remote role, because I'm so used to saying remote, but obviously dispersed.
Yeah.
For us to be interviewing candidates, it was just the best way to go forward.
Definitely, yeah. So just a little bit about, for anyone who's listening who doesn't understand what we're talking about there. We have a solution in the business which is now called Synergy. Essentially video interview technology. It's actually the system that we're talking to each other on right now, where we sort of meet candidates in a virtual meeting room. We record the conversations. We use questions directly from the client that they give us that they would normally ask the candidates at first stage interview. And we effectively take over the process of the first stage interviews away from the client to save them time and money. We do all of the pre-screening of the candidates. We record the conversations with the candidates, and then we let the client and their team watch the videos as a sort of fly in the wall representation of our conversation with the candidate. And it's great the way that it's represented, because when you send them the link, you have a sort of, the video interview recording on one side of the page, time-stamped questions beneath that, so they can jump backwards and forwards between their answers and don't have to watch a 15, 20, 25-minute video in its entirety. And then on the other side of the page, you've got the CV. So they can read their resume at the same time as watching the video interview recording, and it works wonders in terms of saving time. So when they initially came to us, if you remember, they were first of all dubious of the fact that I had moved from Sydney at the time back to the UK, if you recall, and because the previous two times that I had worked with the company. It was from Sydney on a Sydney-based role. I'd met a lot of the candidates in person, and I was able to obviously give them a sort of full rundown on the critique and the summary of like how that interview's gone and what I thought of the candidate in terms of positives and negatives and the whole thing. But the way that we used to do it, I suppose we call the old school way now, don't we, Dill? Like we used to have to meet the candidates in person for a coffee or bring them into the office and then interview them and then essentially try and communicate in a perfect way, which is extremely difficult, if not impossible, to sort of compare that to video. You'd have to tell the client exactly what that person's like, and on an A4 sheet of paper.
Which you just can't do. I mean,
which is so
the power of video. The power of video, you just can't. I mean, we're selling people ultimately in personalities. I mean, I'm not a great writer. I can't write down how great this person is and how good their personality is, and culturally how good they'll be a great fit. But video can do that. I don't know how many times people will look at a CV, think this person's great, bring them in, and then when the first 5 minutes realize that the person just isn't right. And then you've wasted an hour of your time. You've wasted an hour of everyone else's time. And from this, we're just taking away that uncertainty, aren't we, from the start?
Absolutely.
And I think video just gives them that attention straight away on the cultural fit, the personality, and then their ability to communicate and tell people about their experience and what they've done. So it's just, I mean, as you'll know, it's worked actually amazing for us over the last kind of 2 to 3 years.
Yeah. And I suppose the situation with this particular company that we're talking about here, we were passionate about the use of video interview technology because we've seen it work in other clients, and we wanted them to experience that, and I suppose compare it in a way to the way that we used to do it. And even though we came to a successful outcome, it still took a chunk of their time to interview people. A lot they went through sort of multiple first stage interviews with different candidates, and there was the 2 main directors that were sort of giving up their time to interview people at first stage. And we visited several candidates in the end, probably like five or six, I think. If you think about the time that they take to interview those two directors are taking, you're talking 10, 15, maybe 20 hours or whatever of their time before they actually find someone that they move along in the process, and that they're really they're really happy with. So the old school way is designed to sort of use more of your time, isn't it, rather than using less of it. And I suppose what we didn't fully understand, what I didn't fully understand initially when we were dealing with them, is that the fact that their trading firm the trading team are still heavily involved, even though they're based on the other side of the world. They're still heavily involved in terms of selecting a candidate and who they think is right. So what they were having to do on their side as a client is to interview them in person, and then schedule another call with the trading guys to then them talk about what that person's like and everything from their actual physical meeting. So if you think about I suppose it's like, what's the old analogy, like Chinese whispers type thing, where you sort of, you talk about, you say something to one person, and they tell a slightly different story to another person, and then that gets carried on. So it's like we've met the candidate in person, and we try and communicate exactly what they're like. Some things are inevitably missed in that, or they maybe just don't understand exactly what we're driving at from that A4 sheet of paper. And then they meet them in person, and then they have to essentially do the same on their side to the other guys on the other side of the world type thing. So there's that sort of miscommunication at some points with some different candidates. So when they came to us for the third time, they were initially, like I said, very I suppose hesitant is probably the right word for it, because it's very different in terms of the process that we've been successful with, and I totally understand that. That hesitation, because we'd done it one particular way and been successful with it, twice before, and we were approaching them with what is essentially a completely new process. I was in the UK instead of in Sydney, and there was that sort of like pause for thought, and we had to convince them really of the benefits of that.
Well, I suppose because I was heavily involved in this process also, and I hadn't worked with them in the past. It was a process to get them to trust me, and obviously know that as a company we have the same kind of values and stuff like that, and we work very similar, and that it would all go smoothly as it had done the last 2 times you'd worked.
Yeah.
So for us, it's quite important. Obviously, got everything right.
Absolutely, yeah, and I can totally understand why they would think like that, because. He said that they're used to, in their industry as well, they're used to fine lines and fine margins of success and between success and failure, and they understand that to be successful you have to follow a process ultimately. And we were approaching them with what is essentially we're throwing away what had worked before really, and giving them something completely different. The way that we kind of like overcame that is I think we had sent them some example like video interview short list of example candidates that we had recorded internally, just to give them a flavour of, look, this is how the system works, and this is how it's sort of represented, and these are the sort of benefits of it. And they seemed fine with that, and then in the end, I think what we once we worked with them very closely to essentially formulate that bank of questions, which we kind of fine tuned in many ways. We then went and sort of like, I mean, for that role, it's really a headhunt approach, or like the majority of the roles that we seem to work on. Probably say a high percentage of them are headhunt type approaches, because of the niche skills that are involved, and I suppose the high demand for those types of people in the market. So talk us through how we went through the sourcing for that role, because it's a very specialized area of tech, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've done tons of kind of talent pooling previous leading up to it, because I mean you've worked similar roles in the past, and we've had people that we've stayed in touch with over the years, and I think it's just a matter of, these people just don't move around that often, do they? I mean, these guys are top 5%.
Yeah.
They earn decent money. They have great perks. I think for us, it was just kind of keeping in touch with these guys, making sure that we're offering something that they, I mean, look, this role wasn't for everyone purely because they were working from home.
Yeah.
And do you know what? I reckon probably 80% of the people that came back to us is like, nah, not interested.
Yeah.
People just don't have that.
These guys are used to working in offices with couple of hundred people, and like very obviously dependable systems, and the company perks and free lunches, and like all the rest of it and stuff. And I think for some candidates, that leap of working from home is a step too far, because they might a lot of them didn't have the setup that was required. Their current company, or like the current couple of companies, didn't allow people to work from home. So there was a sort of security aspect to it as well. That ruled a lot of people out, didn't it?
I think I remember speaking to quite a lot of candidates. I think that you had spoken to maybe 6 years before, that were still in the current role they're in and not happy to move still.
Yeah,
and I'm like, come on.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, but like you said, these people are very well compensated. And very well looked after in their current companies, and I suppose they held a lot of IP. I mean, that's another thing that was difficult about sourcing that role, because a lot of the candidates were actually under non-compete clauses, which is something something that we've remember that
12 months, even 2 years, some of them.
Yeah, I mean, that's something we don't often come across day to day, is non-compete. No. I mean, we do that funnily enough in the recruitment industry. You get non-compete clauses all the time. It's very standard with people moving between recruitment companies. They go on garden leave, and you have to work out your notice on your garden leave away from the office, and all the rest of it. Yeah. And then a lot of the time you're under very heavily restrictive non-compete clauses, where you can't sort of deal with the clients that the previous companies dealt with, and all the rest of it. But for these guys, these software developers, what's the technologies, if you can remember, it was C++ mainly, wasn't it? C++.
Mainly.
Low latency networks, exchange connectivity, those types of
important algorithms that keep these trading systems going.
Yeah.
And just the knowledge they'll pick up from each role. Companies are quite dubious about them moving around to competitors, and a lot of them will actually completely cut competitors off completely. You can't work for them. Yeah. Or there'll be a two-year garden leave.
It was between, I think the norm was 12 months.
12 months
to 2 years.
Crazy.
Yeah, so they would have to. So if they landed a job, they'd have to wait 12 months. Which for this company, for our client, that wouldn't have worked because the person. The reason why this role had come about is that the person had been headhunted to go and work in a different firm, and they were moving on after 3 years, and essentially that the moment that they handed the notice in, it started the clock, if you remember, ticking. I think
we had 3 months. I think
3 months. 3 months. Yeah. It was 3 months before the person walked away. But we needed to do a handover. The client, needed to do a handover because of the fact that this person is like a key man dependency from a tech perspective. They had to hand over all of the systems and the sort of understanding of the systems that had been built from a trading perspective over to this person. So even a handover of like a week was going to be no good, 2 weeks were going to be no good. They really needed like a month to hand over, which meant that for us, we had
about 6 weeks.
Yeah. By the time we had sort of like walked through with the company to formulate the questions and I suppose bring them on that journey of understanding video interviews and how it was important. Yeah, we probably had about 6 or 7 weeks to fill the role.
And I think 90% of the candidates I spoke to, putting non-competes aside, they were on at least a 3 to 6 month notice period anyway.
Yeah.
That took a big chunk of the market away and kind of left us with quite a small pool. But I mean, we came across some great candidates. And I think the good thing with video is because it doesn't waste too much of their time, it allowed us to actually take a chance on a few people.
Yeah.
It allows us to interview them, people that we might not necessarily want to stick our neck out for the client initially, just in case we're wasting their time or anything like that. But video allows us to kind of like speak to these people, really represent them properly to the client. And if they don't like them, they don't like them. It's our time that's been wasted. It's not theirs.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we're able to take a few risks on a couple
that also works for the candidate as well, because candidates are effectively giving up, because these video interviews are not full hour-long interviews, intense interviews. The whole purpose behind them is so that the client can understand how the person naturally communicates, the personality that comes across naturally when they get talking between our team and the candidate. And what comes out the back of that is, I suppose, a natural assessment from the client's perspective when they do watch these videos in their own time, as to how that person might interact with the team, whether they would fit from a culture perspective, if they think the communication skills are going to be up for the role in terms of dealing with the team on the other side of the world and everything like that, and also being able to obviously share that link with the rest of the team on the other side of the planet, which is something you can't obviously do with a telephone interview or even an in-person interview if they'd met them all initially in person. But no, yeah, I agree. It's good. It works well for the candidate because they're only giving up 15 minutes or 20 minutes of their time, and that effectively could, if it works the way that we know it can work, it can effectively shorten the interview process down. So instead of them bouncing around between multiple conversations and it taking an hour each time, you could essentially spend 15 minutes, and for that one video interview recording to be viewed by 5 or 6 people who are going to be involved in the decision making in the process. So it should, and they all have an opinion on it and stuff. So
I think with this role as well, we're so specific about the kind of person we wanted. I think when we actually found that person, I mean, I knew straight away he was the right person. I think even both of us contacted the guy, and I don't know who contacted first, but I think I contacted him and he was unsure, and then I think he got a message from you, and then he was like, "Oh, maybe let's have a look at this." I don't know if it's that way around or the other way around, but either way, we double hit it.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and, I was obviously revisiting a lot of the previous people, because I'd built up that network over those 2 previous recruitment processes, and I was revisiting a lot of those candidates, as well as obviously trying to add more add more in, to the pipeline. And yeah, I think we'd both sort of like chatted to him about it. I don't think he came back to you though, mate. I think he only came back to me initially. Did he not? He was
no. He came back to me saying that he wasn't sure if he was interested.
All right,
he came back to me.
But
no, I mean, as soon as we interviewed him, I mean, I knew he'd be the one. 100%. I mean, he was really outgoing, quite passionate about what he does, very autonomous, was happy to kind of sit in his room. I think he had a view over Sydney Harbour. I remember him saying to me, and he's like, I've got a great little office. I will sit here and code all day.
Yeah, that's awesome. But no, like even like personality wise, he was perfect, and he had I think he had other things other than which for a lot of these guys is quite difficult, because for them that coding and that environment is very much a way of life, and it's in it, and that it's a lifestyle as well, and it's both their passion and their job. Whereas with the candidate that we eventually placed into the company, it was his passion and his job, but he had other passions, which meant that he wasn't so he could step away from it and go and do something else and come back to it afresh, and he wasn't sort of like a grind of that pressure of being the sole tech person in the company and everything that comes along with it and stuff. Because he was what was it, salsa? He was into salsa dancing.
Yeah.
That was right. Yeah. Awesome. So yeah, I mean, that was a real good journey for us to kind of go on, in terms of like, taking the client from being really quite apprehensive about that new way of working to then really just like working with them really closely in terms of understanding the process and how it's represented, and dealing with them day to day on the questions, and how we're finding the sourcing aspect of it, which is good, because part of the video interview system that we use, we have a video messaging tool called Capture, don't we? So we were giving them updates on how we're finding the sourcing of it, some of the challenges that we're coming across during the process, and we were sending those video messages to them just to give them an update, which I think they really appreciated as well, because again they could circulate that internally, and people could watch it and rewatch it, and everyone felt informed. Which again, comparing that to just a sort of standard update email, you get a lot more depth from it, and it allows us obviously to get our, I suppose, personalities across as well, because a lot of the times when we maybe haven't had interaction with certain individuals within the company, they might not know what we're all about, or they might have had a bad experience with recruiters in the past. So we always, at any time that we can, try and put our natural, authentic selves forward, really.
I mean, we want to be visual as possible. And especially in a time like now with COVID and everyone's kind of locked away and no one can really communicate properly, I think this has just become even more important to us, really, hasn't it?
Definitely.
I think just thinking about it back then, it's just, it just wasn't so much a thing. And now it's just everyday normal life for everyone.
100%. Yeah. I think that was a great, I mean, we get it a lot with the clients that we work with. That feeling of like, what I'm talking about, Dylan, with that feeling of like becoming a part of their business for that recruitment process, and that feeling of like, because there was so many layers to that to that project, where there was a time pressure for sure, in terms of getting it right. And obviously when we work on these types of roles, which obviously it was a senior level role, the package was extremely attractive from the candidate's perspective. there was that time pressure of, we need to get, if we don't get this right and we don't find someone in 7 weeks end to end, then, you know, it's a sort of, it was an open-ended question. It was like, what are we going to do? Because if the systems go down and that person had left, there'd be no one to sort of deal with it. And the companies, it would be essentially a bit of a sitting duck, and because they're a trading firm, and they wouldn't be able to trade. So it was literally a critical hire of the utmost importance, but it was also extremely time sensitive, with the added pressure, I think, of that new way of working and that new process, which, to be honest, I think was great, because we were both so heavily involved in it, and we managed to see it to a successful conclusion. And then seeing the impact that person's had on the company now, and they're still at the company now, obviously maintained the relationship with him to see how he's getting on, and he's still loving it, and, you know, really enjoying the company and the way that it works, and it lets him obviously do, you know, it's had a really positive impact on his life compared to the company that he was working with previously, where he was obviously commuting into the office, and it was a very different way of working. Now he's, you know, working from home. He can sort of, you know, enjoy his other interests as well at the same time, and same with the you know, with the client, they're extremely happy because they found someone who's a perfect fit for their, you know, for their business. And I think he's done some exceptional things as well in terms of like building new systems and you know, processes, and he's sort of like really revitalized what they've done, which is, again, it's had a massive impact from a, you know, from a financial perspective in terms of the money that's been made by using those trading systems. So it was brilliant for us to work on something that, because there's always pressure in terms of what we do, but that one felt like it had been cranked up a notch with
exactly.
you know, with it as well. And it was just brilliant because we managed to get it over the line, and everyone was happy in the end, which is why we do what we do ultimately.
I think they've gone from one role every 3 years to every 10 years now.
Yeah, we've kind of done ourselves out of a client in many ways for that. For that, for sure.
We'll be there for them next
time. Yeah. So, but I mean, we keep in touch. We keep in touch with them, and they're you know, they're always a great bunch of people. And yeah, it was a really interesting one to, you know, to kind of work on that for sure. So, cool. Should we talk about a little bit? So that's like one example of obviously one of the clients and stuff. Should we talk a little bit, just briefly for 5-10 minutes about how we started the business and how we get involved in that?
Should we talk about how you started and I then became involved, or?
Yeah, I think that's quite. I mean, I think that's quite a good story. About how I think that's quite a good story. Yeah. So basically, so I had started Digitalent in 2000, and it was in October. Our third birthday's coming up actually on the 25th of October. It's now the 6th of October today. So I started the business. I moved back from Sydney to the UK on the 18th of October, and first time I started working on the business when I opened the laptop was when the jet lag had subsided, which was a week later. And my daughter was 2 years old at the time, so I was getting up with her for a week, and she was getting up at odd times and everything like that. So anyway, started the business on the 25th of October, and I think I was working, flying solo, trying to get it off the ground and mainly in the UK. I kind of left all of my clients and candidates behind in the Sydney market and started from afresh in the UK. And then I think I'd been working on the business for I think it was about 9 months, wasn't it? When
yeah,
you
come on 6 or 7, yeah.
Yeah, I'd probably say 9. I think it was 9 months by the time I'd eventually convinced you to kind of come on board.
Well, I mean, we'd been working together on recruitment for probably 8 years or so. I decided to take a good year and a half out of recruitment.
That's
It battered me down for large organizations and stuff like that. And look, I think I was back in England, wasn't I, at the time? I think I was, I'd nipped back for a month or so to see the family and everything. It'd been a while. And I just remember getting a panic phone call from Chris.
You need to rewind because you came to my house, didn't you, for like as a catch up for lunch?
That's true. I forgot I'd been to yours the week before.
Yeah.
So you continue.
You'd come to actually it was my house. It was the in-laws' house because I was living with my my fiance's mum and dad at the time. Since when we moved back, she's from Southport, and you came round for lunch. Remember, and we went to there was a little pub round the corner, and you were at a kind of like loose end because you were wondering which direction to go, and you had a few options available to you at the time, and various people talking to you about different avenues and stuff. And I said to you over lunch, like, why don't you need to come on board with like the business and help me get the Australian side of things off and running. And I think at the time the business was so young in that we didn't have a presence in Australia, and it was I'd only been doing it for 9 months. So I think definitely there was because your reaction to that, I would definitely say, was lukewarm. you were like, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. It was a difficult time for me back then.
It was.
I remember.
That's right.
I was a lost soul.
Yeah.
I didn't know what to do.
That's right. Yeah. But you had you did have a couple of other offers that you were sort of like exploring, and I think obviously you were officially on holiday at the time in the UK, so you probably weren't thinking about obviously what.
I think what it was is I hadn't actually really thought about getting back into recruitment fully.
Yeah,
it actually wasn't on my mind at the time.
Yeah,
I think when you asked me, I was a bit like, recruitment.
Yeah, because the business had only gone 9 months. I think there was part of that as well where you were thinking. You probably didn't know what was going to happen with Digitalent. I think that was a part of it as well. You were probably thinking, it's like really brand new business as well.
Yeah, but look, mate, if I was going to go into business with anyone, mate, it'd be you. So that wasn't my issue.
I would have had words if you'd have gone into business with anyone else. To be fair,
that would never have happened.
But I remember after that. I remember after that meeting, I was so dejected that I thought, because I just thought I did, you just weren't up for it, and you weren't going to do it. And I remember saying to my fiance Jez, I remember saying to her, he's just not going to do it. He's just not up for it. And then basically what had happened was, funny the way things work out. But so I was on a call literally about 2 days later with a company that I'd sort of, been speaking to from a new business perspective, and I'd been referred to them by someone in my network. And basically we had this company. It was a software company. They were setting up in Sydney, and this person had referred me on to this this lady who was effectively moving from London to Sydney to set up this firm's first Australian operation, and they wanted to speak to someone who knew the Sydney market and everything like that. So this was a reasonably sized company, and at the time I probably had only done business with maybe 2 or 3 clients at the time in the UK. So I was really keen on trying to land a Sydney based client, because they were talking about
60 roles or something like that.
Talking about multiple roles type thing,
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was potentially, it could have been the, you know, the spark that ignited the sort of Australian side of the business, albeit, like I said, I was a one-man band at that time. And I remember doing a video call with the potential client, and everything was going well, and I gave her a load of info on the Sydney market, and especially in developers, and they were thinking about recruiting DevOps type roles and things like that. Gave her a great amount of like information, hoping was going to be helpful. And then she said to me at the end of the call, "So is Chris, is it just yourself in the business?" And for whatever reason, I said to her, "Well, actually, no. I've got a," because at the time you hadn't fully said no. You hadn't said no, but you definitely hadn't said yes. We were living in Sydney at the time, so I said, "Oh, I've got my, you know, business partner Dillan," which we weren't a business partner at the time, but I suppose I was trying to project an image of like being bigger than I was, and just at that point I was just this one man band that like in a little sort of like shed in Southport doing this video call, and yeah. I just always remember the moment, because I thought, oh my God. She said, "So is it just yourself in the business, Chris?" And I said, "No, actually, I've got my business partner Dillan, and he lives in Sydney." And she went, "Excellent. Well, I'd love to meet him." Whoa, okay. I was like, absolutely. I had to explain. Obviously, he's in the UK on holiday at the minute. We'll be back, and you know, she was like, "Oh, we'll line up a meeting in like sort of like a couple of weeks when I'm over in Sydney, and you know, it'd be good to chat to him and everything like that." So I had to jump on the phone to you straight after that call, and both of us were rolling about laughing, weren't we? Because
I just had your panic voice saying, "Dill, I need you to go for a meeting in Sydney." And I'm like, "What?"
Great. But thankfully, you
need to take your status.
And that was the next thing. I said, you need to update update your LinkedIn, because obviously you'd spent a couple of years out of recruitment at that stage. So I asked you to update your LinkedIn, and thankfully, when you look back on things and you think, if that hadn't happened, we wouldn't be in this position now, or if that hadn't happened. So if that call hadn't happened and I hadn't, you know, said what I'd said at that time, we wouldn't have gone into business with each other, probably, like highly likely anyway. We wouldn't have done it. Yeah. And also as well, there is a button on your LinkedIn profile which it has to be toggled on to share that new information with your network, right? When you updated your LinkedIn profile, thankfully that button was toggled on.
Yeah, which I've always had it on, yeah.
Yeah, so as soon as you update your profile, it shares that information with your network. And I think that was
I just had an influx.
Yeah.
I had an influx of all my old candidates, all my old clients. You're back in the game. We got any jobs? I've got this job. Can you find any candidates? And I'm like, what the hell?
Yeah, but I think that was like a light bulb moment for you, because then you started thinking maybe something in this here. And that sort of like, I think that was what kind of changed, not changed your mind, but that's what kind of, I suppose, you had the realization that it might be a good.
The realization of being able to do something ourselves and how we want to do it. Yeah. I think we both worked for recruitment companies where KPIs are through the roof and pressure to speak to numerous candidates, numerous clients. You can't do your job properly. You get a bad name as a recruiter, like a lot of people do, because of those companies. And I think I was just tired of that. We weren't able to work how we wanted to work. And I think that's what we've always talked about, starting our own companies, because we really want to be different and to be able to service our clients and give the best customer experience possible. And I think at that point, I realized, shit, I can actually do something here for people that I've worked with in the past, but do it my way.
Do it, yeah, exactly. No, but that was...
that's the starting point, mate.
Here we are. And here we are.
Nearly 3 years on.
It's 3 years on, and we've
still see your face every day.
This is I don't think you'll ever get away from...
We've been working together for like 10 years now, have we not?
I know, yeah. We have, yeah. 2012,
12, I think it was. Or 11?
No, because
10.
Yeah, it was 10, because I left for Sydney in 2012.
Yeah, 2010.
Yeah, and we worked together, obviously, Manchester, for a big IT recruitment firm, biggest in Europe, in Manchester. And then when I moved to Sydney, we always used to, because I used to give you a lift to work, remember? And we always used to joke in the car about...
Worst driver on the planet, mate. Nearly killed me every day.
Yeah.
Every morning.
I'm actually a very sensible driver.
Biggest road ever.
This is it. But all we used to do is talk. We used to just talk about Australia, didn't we? Because you'd been,
yeah. You talked about the bat phone.
Yeah. I used to always joke that I'd get a job over there, and I'd call you in the middle of the night and say, like, Dill, the bat phone would ring, and you'd be like, Dill, get your stuff packed.
I'm coming.
Coming to Sydney. And to be fair, it wasn't a million miles off what actually happened, was it?
Yeah, it's about 6 months. I think it's probably 8 months until I arrived, because I remember I got the offer.
Yeah.
And then they had recruitment freeze.
That was right.
The next 3 or 4 months. So I had my offer, and I'm just sat there waiting.
Yeah. Which is horrible when you're in that position, when you're working for a company and you know that you're leaving so far out. That's tough. Like, but thankfully it all kind of fell into place. So
that's it.
Awesome. Well, we'll end it there. I think that's the a good little insight. That story, by the way, of how you came on board, that was the succinct, trimmed down version. I think there's a lot more, there's a lot more detail that we could probably cover in that. That's probably an hour episode just by itself, for sure. But that was the first ever episode of the Digitales podcast from me, Chris Morrow, and Dillan Leslie-Rowe.
Me, Dillan Leslie-Rowe.